Okay, this is Richard Hobbs. This is copyrighted 2018, November 28th. It's Thursday morning, 2018. This is copyrighted by richardpaulhobbs at gmail.com. And I'm in the bathroom, and this is the bathroom heat pipe. And this is the my phone, the black phone, the one that's for Yonkers church. And it says that outside the temperature is 39 degrees Fahrenheit, and that it's Thursday, November 29th at 6:35 a.m. And this is the other phone. This phone says it's 42 degrees outside, 6:36. I'll see if I can get this to update. I push the update button. So it says now it's 39 degrees. That's having updated it. The 29th Thursday. This is the pipe in which there should be heat in order to heat this apartment. And I can put my hand on it and hold it fast and stern. No problem, because there's no heat in it. Mr. Patrick Lusko, Sr., the inspector for the city of Yonkers, claims that the reason there's no heat in my apartment is because I got the radiators covered up with too much stuff, and that stuff keeps the heat from coming into the room. Well, there's nothing covering this pipe. It would have been impossible for me to keep this pipe covered up enough to accomplish what he claims, because heat rises, one, and two, if there were things around this pipe, they would absorb the heat and they would hold on to it as a heat sink, and that would mean that instead of the heat just going up through the ceiling quickly, it would be retained inside this area of this apartment by being in those items that would, quote, be surrounding the radiator. And what if today they do here as usual around 7, the heat will turn on and it will start to go through. If I can do it, and remember, I will try to have another one of these videos and record that. I'll leave these phones here, and I will come into this other room, the room that is, quote, my bedroom, and I will, and it's, of course, it's freezing in the bedroom. In this room, it's cold in the living room and the bathroom and the kitchen. But it's not so cold that you would freeze. Here in this room, which is quote unquote the bedroom, it's so cold that nobody could sleep in this room or live in this room. You can see the sunlight is beginning to come up. It's getting to be we're getting to the shortest day of the year. I don't know if I can reach across to this. I'll try. What I've learned by making these videos and paying attention to this directly is that in this room, there's never any heat because this pipe doesn't work at all. And the landlord either intentionally has it that way, or because of mismanagement. And you can see I can just hold this radiator and it's cold. It's not just not hot, it's cold. And there's nothing surrounding it, like Mr. Lasko would say, that would keep the heat from coming into the room. There are these things around it, but they're not. The worst thing that would happen is they would act as heat sinks and they would absorb any heat and hold on to it and keep it in this room. And so would have all of the things that I did have in this room, that as a reasonable person who understands science and understands what's going on and knows it's freezing in this room, I had them here as heat sinks, things to absorb the heat and hold on to it, thinking that there was heat sometime coming into this room. But now I see there's no heat ever. And in a minute, I could have any day, within an hour, I could move anything away from this radiator if the landlord or the super or anyone ever wanted to come in and make this radiator work. And I've asked them over the years to do it. I've begged them to do it. I didn't do it in writing that I'm aware of, except for the fact that I did in attempt to do it in complaints that I filed with the federal government and with other places. The problem is that I knew that given the way the government works, and given the way the Section 8 works, and given the acumen, the nature, the way that McCreight Associates approaches the inspection of this building on behalf of Section 8, and the way that the Section 8 officers approach the issue, you can see that there's not a lot of stuff in here. There's those videotapes and movies and books around in this apartment. I don't use cable television. I cannot afford cable television. If I could afford it, I wouldn't buy it anyway, because I believe it's an evil thing. It's my personal and religious belief. I don't think cable should be what it is, the way it is. So for political reasons and for religious reasons and for other reasons, I don't like cable. I have a right to do that. Just because I'm poor doesn't mean I have to pay for cable, and that I shouldn't have videotapes, many of which I had to put in storage. And now, being poor, I'm having to pay an extra fee, close to $200 a month, to store this stuff in the storage when this room is empty and I can't use it to live in. And all the reasons that Section 8 and the inspectors would use to say that I'm creating problems by having stuff here are all false flags. They're all not accurate or correct. And any reasonable person could understand that I'm not doing something crazy or wrong. I'm just simply trying to live within the means that I have and what's available, given the fact that I'm in a wheelchair, that I'm handicapped, given the fact that for 7 years that I lived here, I couldn't take a shower here. I had to go out to other places to take showers, or just use bed baths, or just use sponge bathing at the sink, because it's freezing in here. There's no hot water, and I'm not the most important person in the world. I know there's babies in this building, there's families, there's people who do go to work, and there's no one rich here except maybe the landlord, I don't know. And so now I wish I had, I'm glad I made this video. I'm going to stop it, and then at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, the heat's going to come on, and I'm going to make another video that's going to show that I can't touch the radiator, and I don't know whatever else to do. I don't know how to get it. I can't figure out how to find something that will measure the temperatures in this room and record them, so I could have that as evidence. The building inspection department, the city of Yonkers, with all of its firemen and policemen and other employees working through the night, has never been willing to have anyone come here at 3 o'clock in the morning and see that it's freezing in this room. I did years ago. I was able to make ice in this bedroom in the middle of the winter. but I didn't have a phone that I could record it with, and right now I'm overwhelmed with things to do, trying to prepare for this trial, trying to, having tried to get everything out of here to satisfy Mr. Michael Linker, who was the lawyer who said I don't understand what these terms mean, clutter and fire hazard. I did never see anything in this building, in this apartment, that was a fire hazard. Because the fire hazard to me means something that's going to cause a fire to ignite. And when the lawyer for Emma's property talked about that in the hearing in the court, that's what they were implying to the judge, that I have something that's a fire hazard. It's going to cause a fire. It's going to complicate things if there is a fire. Well, I didn't have a fire hazard. I had the best use of the circumstances and the situations that a reasonable person could have used in order to live under all the obligations of the Section 8 and the law and the rules as I understood them, as they were expressed to me. When I look up the word hoarding in the dictionary, it doesn't mean what you people say it means. I'll show you in the dictionary it means something different. And it doesn't make any sense to me, a reasonable person, that they imply that hoarding means I'm doing something bad. And hoarding in the dictionary suggests I'm doing something good. And clutter, the word clutter to me means a table that I don't have my clothing in order. And it's not in order because I can't clean my dirty clothes. I have no aid. The Section 8 inspected this place for years and made issues over a little pile of trash on the floor that I hadn't swept up. Well, I was handicapped and I needed an aid, and then they suggested, oh, we'll get you an aid. They even wrote it on paper, but they never got me an aid. They never followed through or did anything, and no matter how I tried to get that happen, it didn't happen. I didn't even know who my person was at Section 8 who was going to help me, who was supposed to help see to it that I got an aid. And then she was on vacation, and then she was on maternity leave or something or whatever. Whatever it wasn't my fault. I can only do what I can do. I can't come here and rebuild the courthouse in the city and put it right. It's wrong. The city of Yonkers, the people working in the city of Yonkers do a lot of things that are unprofessional and that shouldn't be. But that's what they do, and the people governing this place allow it, and they think it's okay. And the whole system is a scheme to take poor people like me and abuse us. So all these people make a living off of abusing the poor person. Everyone here is making a living except me. Everyone in this room, the judge and the lawyer, and everyone is making a living off of the fact that the Section 8 and the building inspector and the lawyers and my quote aide, or not aide, the person, my case manager, and all these people, you all get paid money, you go home, you have heat, you live your life, you can afford all the things that I can't afford, and you don't live in a place with 300 square feet. You live in a place with 1,200 square feet, and you have money to store stuff in storage, and I don't have enough money to afford to pay the rent $200 a month, plus pay thousands of dollars a year in electricity to use a space heater to heat the apartment. I can't do that. I don't have the money. I did do it. And the first 2 years, my bill was sky high. I owed the electric company so much money, they were going to shut the electric off. And I tried to fix it. And I don't need gas. The Section 8 says I need gas. I have to have a gas stove working. Well, I don't use a gas stove. I don't want a gas stove. To me, a gas stove can explode. and it can cause a fire, and it's a real fire risk. And I don't like using space heaters because they're a fire risk. But this entire building, everybody in this building at night has to use some other form of heat to heat their apartment, or they have to freeze. So I ended up stopped paying the electric, and then I froze, and then I ended up in the hospital, sick. I wanted to cut my foot off because I didn't have heat in my apartment. Now, how am I supposed to prove that if you don't believe it? Nobody will come and spend the night with me and see what the temperature is. Nobody that you will believe as a witness. And if I try to bring them in, you're going to finagle things so that you'll somehow disqualify their witness. And yes, I can prove my case. We'll bring all the tenants in, all 37 of them, into here and have them testify under oath, whether there's heat in their apartment or not, whether they know it or not, or what they have to do. And the landlady has said to me on 3 occasions that she doesn't need to put heat on here at night. There's no reason to do it, and nobody cares but me. But the law says she must put the heat on at night, and she disobeys the law. And she does it so she doesn't have to burn the oil, so she keeps the money that we pay for rent on the lease and the rents instead of spending it. And she mismanages the building. She mismanages it because the heating system isn't working right. The heater in this room, I showed you, it's cold. I'll show you any time of the day or night, it's cold. It'll never be hot. It hasn't been hot for 7 years, although I didn't probably realize that until the last few months where I've been making these videos and checking it in exact. And so now what am I supposed to do? This isn't my fault. And the reason the landlord didn't get their rent was because they didn't maintain this apartment right. They had holes in the ceiling, and they had sewage coming into my tub, and they didn't put the caulking right, and they didn't fix the kitchen right. And the reason if there was any smell here, the reason it smelled is because the pipes in the wall needed to be replaced, because they stank, because the management of the building is unprofessional. And that's the causing of the problem. And then either to make extra money for themselves, like robber barons, they throw people out 2 or 3 a month, and when they throw people out, they keep the 1 month security and the 1 month's rent they get for being the realtors who rented the apartment. They get 2 months' rent, and if they throw 2 or 3 tenants out a month, that's close to $2,500 per apartment. That's $5,000. That's $60,000 a year, or $80,000 a year. Extra money. But they don't use that money to pay for the heat. They don't use that money to buy oil. They don't use that money to hire exterminators to come in and get rid of the rats out of the trash or the mice out of the houses. They don't do anything to manage the building professionally. They wait until October, when it's freezing, to get anyone to come in and see whether the pipes are going to work, which they did this year. The first week when it was really, really cold, they had signs up in the building that said, well, the heat's not working because it's being repaired. But if they were professionals, that would have been done in August, in the summer, not in October. And they would have gotten professionals to do it instead of getting people who don't have degrees, who don't have qualifications, who they pay less money to, and they don't get the job done. That's exactly what they've done here over the years. They've mismanaged the building, and it hurts everyone. It hurts all of us because the building is slowly but surely deteriorating to the point where the ceiling falls down on somebody upstairs in the next apartment. And what happens? The Mr. Lasco came in here because the landlord, he pulled him in to try to prove that I am doing things that I should be thrown out of here. but I'm not doing anything that I should be thrown out of here. And in that same time period, instead of fixing the ceiling and repairing the things, she had her super busy because she's throwing people out. So the super is so busy every month getting apartments ready to re-rent. She rents them real quick here. She rents them real quick to anybody until they come in here and they find out what's going on here. And my case manager and the attorney said to me after the second time of going to court, she's a slumlord. We all know she's a slumlord. Well, what does that mean? Well, I know what it means now, because when I went, the Mr. Laska said to me in the corridor of this apartment building, when he left the second time he inspected here, whatever the date was, he said, this is your fault. There's heat in this building. Why, we've never had any complaints about heat in the building except from you, which was a lie. And then he left and the building and went off, and then that's the same time, the second time, when the landlady said to me, well, we don't have to have heat in this building at night. It's not required. We're fine. The only one complaining is you because But that's not true, because that's not the law. And she doesn't know the law. She has a fantasy about what the law is. At least she does it privately and told me, it's your fault. You didn't pay rent for a year here, but I paid my rent. The rent she didn't get didn't come to her from Section 8 because she took 6 months or 8 months to fix the apartment because she's doing something nefarious. She's doing something underhanded. And she's trying to manipulate and fool the system, use the system to scam the community and to do something wrong. And maybe she's not intentionally doing it. I don't know. And I'm not going to accuse her of anything. God bless her. But dear Jesus, for 20 years, there's been no heat in the buildings in Yonkers in the night on Caryl Avenue. Not just this building, but many other buildings. How do I, a handicapped, poor person, prove this if the whole city of Yonkers isn't interested in proving it or enforcing the law? If it's the way of the city of Yonkers to let it be this way, what am I supposed to do? Well, I'll tell you. I knew that if I complained about the heat and these issues and got that the end result would be the Section 8 and the building and the city of Yonkers, the employees would be to try to make sure that I get evicted and maybe hope to have me lose my Section 8, which may happen now. I don't know. I've been so busy. I asked the court to give me time, and they insisted on 3 weeks, and the first week was Thanksgiving, and nothing was going to happen here. I have to do this pro se. I don't have a computer. I don't have a way to produce a written document without very, very extreme difficulties. I have heart disease. My heart is damaged. I'm dying, sir. And you demand that I come in here and defend myself. This is banal. This is ludicrous. This is evil. And forgive me for taking a political statement, but if it's any truth, Mr. Trump says that there's a swamp in Washington, then we got a sewer here in Yonkers, a sewer. Forget about a swamp. We got a sewer, and I'll tell you, alligators live in the sewers too. And so, is this what we're supposed to be? How in the world could it possibly be that for 20 years there's no heat in this building at night? And that's the law for 20 years, and there's nobody enforcing it. And the way that the city goes about trying to enforce it is ludicrous. They're going to send someone at 10 o'clock in the morning to see if there's heat here or not. When the 7 o'clock they turn the heat on. And the ice, if there is ice in my bedroom, which there has been in the middle of the night, it's melted and it's hot. In fact, I guess it wouldn't be because there's no heat in that room at all. I keep the door closed. Because if I don't keep the door closed, then the cold comes into this room, and this is cooler, and I have to do something not to freeze to death. And I almost did freeze to death. I was in the hospital for almost 2 years because of not having heat here. Now, what's really sad about all this is I'm on SSI and Medicaid. I don't qualify for SSD because I'm 1/4 short. And when I did work, I made $400 a year sometimes. And I didn't make enough money to pay into the system. I paid into the system, but I was short. So there's many quarters where I paid my share, but it wasn't enough to qualify because the system is set up to abuse the poor and to mistreat them and not give them equal protection and not give them equal rights. Because most of the black people are poor, and it's racist. It's a Democrat Party racist system that's been run for years. So in New York State, the prisons are half full of black people, but there's not half the people in New York are black. 15% are black, and in the prisons half are black. That's racism, and it's not done by the Republicans. The Republicans don't control this state. Not for they maybe they had a governor, but he was a liberal governor. He wasn't a conservative progressive like I am. And the whole system is crooked, rotten. It's rotten, crooked, set up to let a poor person like me have no help. Everyone gets paid to help me. I have a broken wheelchair, no fix. I go to a hospital for wound care that doesn't take care of me right. They don't even know how to take care of me right, but they get paid. And now it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And I've been trying for the last 4 years to figure out a way to get people together and to deal with this, to bring in action that the city, that these 13 people in the building have to agree that we need someone else to manage the building. But that doesn't have to be. The city of Yonkers can come and look at the situation and say, hey, this is mismanagement, and we're going to impose this upon them. But they won't do that. Now, why won't they do that? Why haven't they done that? What's going on? I don't know, and I'm not in a position to find out. There's an inspector general. I called him last month. Finally, I called him in the past, and they seemed like as if it was just there for show, that it wasn't going to do anything. Now, there's been a little change in the government because he used to call this hotline, and you talk to a recording and no one ever responds. Now, at least when you call the hotline for heat, they have the people that are doing the helpline answer it 24 hours a day. So that's a little improvement. But it's still the same difference. They give the information to Mr. Lasco, and he is, I don't know, is he colluding with the landlords to allow them not to have to pay for the heat? Is that what's going on? Is he a kind, generous inspector who's just going to give leniency and lets the poor people suffer? Because the poor people end up, and it creates a real fire hazard. It creates a real fire hazard with them putting space heaters on, using their ovens, and it harms the building because every night the walls freeze. Inside the walls, they freeze, and the water gets hard and it expands, and then they thaw out and they get less. And you do that every day, 100 days a year for 20 years, and you end up with a building that the roof is leaking. It rains here and the water comes down inside the walls because it leaks. And the management doesn't do it right. They don't know what they're doing. They're not professionals at running a building. They're just professionals at making sure they get as much money out of it as they can and spend the least money, or if they do spend money, instead of effectively improving things, they ruin things. That's what happens here. Now, I don't know. I've done this for 29 minutes, and it must be getting close to 7 o'clock. And in past times, there's no heat here. Let's see what time it is on the phones. $7:05. 30. Here's the phone again. 39 degrees. 7:05. Thursday, November 29th. Now I'll use my thumb. It's hard to do this. And I'll hit this and try to get a new. There's the updated weather. Update now. Now it's 37 degrees at 7:05, according to this phone. And the other phone, the one that we have for the church, it's I don't know how to get this phone to come up right to start with. There's 39 degrees. Push the update button. Update now. It's hard to, I don't know how to do this. Update now. So I'm going to try to push the update now button. And it's 37 degrees according to the update. And it's 7:07. Now, I don't know. Some days, 7 o'clock, it goes on the heat. Maybe it's going to be 8 o'clock, and I'm not going to spend an hour doing this. I mean, it's ludicrous what I have to do to try to do all these jobs. Now, the firemen came here. They came in April, and they came again in the last time that Lasco was here. And the first time they came, I said that the landlady had them come in because she wanted to prove that I have a fire hazard here so that she could evict me. And so, but I have too much stuff, and they came in, and first at the door they talked to me. I say to them, well, you know, there's no heat in this building at night. And they think I'm crazy. They really did. They didn't believe me. They thought I was wrong. And I explained from common sense, from a reasonable person's point of view, I explained to them that this building is corrupted, is ruining, that it's a mismanagement of the building, not me. And then they came in and, you have, the day they came, I had been rearranging things in the back room, so it looked a little bit like there was stuff blocking the windows, but I never blocked the windows. I never blocked the radiators. I'm intelligent enough to know what's what, and I do what is the wisest and the best thing I can do given my resources. And since for 7 years I pay the rent to cover the one bedroom, but I can't use the one bedroom to live in because of the mismanagement of the building, I've used it for storage. And I've done it for 7 years, and for 7 years, every year the Section 8 passes it. Sometimes they come in and they fail it because I don't have the place uncluttered. But I don't have it uncluttered because I never had an aide to help me, and I've been crippled. I've been sick. I've been overwhelmed. For the first 4 years, I could never take a shower here, maybe twice a year, and then I had to stand in sewage to do it. So I had to go out to the public places to use public showers to get a shower. And then I had to pay for heat, extra heat, and the Section 8 won't consider that to lower my portion of the rent for the building. So I'm paying $200 a month rent, and I'm paying at least $200 a month heat. When you spread it out over the year, I'm paying $2,000 or $3,000 in electricity to heat the apartment just to keep it bare minimum. And I'm doing the best I can do in poverty, overwhelmed with a government that isn't going to do what it's supposed to do to enforce the law and give justice to anyone, to make sure that we have. Why in the world do we have a law that says there has to be heat at night, and then the city scheme, the method they use to enforce that law, just makes a joke out of the law? For 20 years. This is gross negligence. This isn't just negligence. This is gross negligence. And you go to court, and they have the system set up so crooked that then the federal judge will say, well, there's no gross negligence because the mayor and the heads never know anything about it. Well, that's a lie. The only way they don't know anything about it is complete ignorance and refusal to be aware of anything and to make sure that there's no evidence that can be used to hold them accountable. But they get plenty of money. They get paid real good. They don't have to worry about the taxes because they make $250,000 a year. So if they pay $40,000 in taxes, they still have $200,000 left. While the people, the rest of us, if we're lucky, we make $20,000 or we make $50,000. If we have two people working in our family, maybe we make $100,000 and we pay $50,000 of it in taxes and tax-related expenses. And we don't have anything. We don't have any money built up. We have no alternative. And everyone says that if you're poor, oh, you can sue. But a poor person can't sue anybody for anything, except every once in a while. One of them gets to have some big case that rich people set up and get paid for, and then that person won this big lawsuit. Well, I'm telling you, you can't go to court if you're poor because you can't get an attorney to represent you. And the attorneys, I don't know if they do it intentionally so, but the Legal Aid Society in Yonkers will defend me if there's an issue with being evicted over the rent, and they'll defend me. But for the 2 years they've represented me, or however long it is, they've refused to ever let it be said in the courtroom that there's no heat here. It doesn't matter. It's not part of this case. And for 2 years, no matter how many times you complain to the city of Yonkers, there's no response. And the only response that really comes through is finally, well, we got to get rid of this person because they're a troublemaker. And it's retaliation, and it's against the law. But it doesn't matter because the law isn't made for it to be the way it says, the way it looks. It's made so that poor people like me can be taken advantage of and abused, and other people in the upper class, the elite, are making a little bit of money, and it's all a scam. And what am I supposed to do? Well, I need a larger apartment. I have too much stuff for the square footage of this apartment. So my case manager says, oh, well, you can only have a one-bedroom apartment. But she can't figure out that there could be a one-bedroom apartment that's 4 times the size of this apartment, but only has 1 bedroom. But that's possible. And there are places all over the country where I should be able, with my Section 8, to have a whole house and be qualified for it. It is, as I know how the Section 8 works, because I spent 45 years as a free person working without a salary, helping homeless people to get a place to live. I know the whole system. I don't get paid for it. I was in poverty when I was doing this. Some of the homeless people I helped had more money than I did, but I knew how to manage my money, and I wasn't homeless until eventually 4 years before I came into here. A very similar set of circumstances as this made me homeless. Government, people using the government to abuse the poor. And I can prove it. I can prove all of it because there's federal law cases, because I've gone to the federal courts and I've sued to just make a record of the fact that what has happened. But I didn't get anywhere because the same ignorance that seems to be in Yonkers is in many other places in the country. And I was in the hospital and everyone said, case manager and friends, you got to move from that apartment. Well, Jesus put me in this apartment for this day, for this issue, because Jesus, over the course of history, has these things happen, like Martin Luther King and like others, the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, where common people stood up against abuse from the elites who were doing something very evil and covering it up. But now, I can't even subpoena people because the way the court here forced me to do this in 3 weeks when 1 week was holiday, and I need the help of the pro se, and they're not here half the time. They're very busy helping other people, or whatever they're doing, I don't know. But you can't get their help the way you need it, so now here I am again. I finally could only get subpoenas set up on the 29th or the 30th, and there's not enough time to get the judge to approve them, if the judge will approve them, and then serve them. And I don't know the names of the people living upstairs above me. I don't have the ability to hear them, their name and write it down. And they won't tell it to me because they don't want to be subpoenaed. Because nobody, even the poor people, they don't want to get involved because they know the system's crooked and against them. And they know that the only thing will happen to them is what's happening to me, which is if I complain and redress the government, I will be abused. I will be punished. I will be left looking to be the bad guy. And I'm not the bad guy. I'm the guy who's being abused. And the part of the Republican Party that I'm involved with is the part of it, it's still cold. So it's still cold. So I wish that I had done this the right way and it would come out 7:17 in the morning. Now, to get up and to do this video, which is the only way I know of to get any evidence of not having heat here, then I only have 24 hours in a day and I gotta sleep. I'm supposed to sleep a lot because I have a bad heart. So that's going to end this video, and I'll wait. I guess it'll be 8 o'clock when the heat will come on, if it comes on at all, and I'll make a short video then to show when the heat is on. It's not that there's never heat in this building. It's that the scheme of heating in this building and in the other buildings on this street and in many other buildings in Yonkers is such that the landlords get to abuse the tenants. The money they get for the lease and the rent, they don't have to spend the way they should spend it. And so then you end up with people like me who suffer, people who get evicted and people who die and people who get sick. And the whole reason, which is social justice, that these laws and rules exist, is moot. And I have a tub there. I have a tub. I have a purple wash tub because I have to wash my clothes by hand. And I have a thing there to dry the clothes. And this is clutter, the inspection, Section 8 inspector says. And I have dirty clothes here because I'm so overwhelmed trying to prepare for this case and put stuff in storage, and everybody, the whole system abuses me. It takes advantage of me. And I can only do so much. Then I have to, that's the end of what I can do. So instead of writing my papers out now to get subpoenas, I'm sitting here making a video. I can't do them both at the same time. The lack of rent in this building, in this apartment, isn't my fault. It's the mismanagement of the building. If they would have repaired things in April, it would have been fine. If someone would have explained to me that according to the official rules, I can't have so much stuff in my apartment. Instead of telling me that I'm a hoarder and I have to throw stuff out. That's not right. Just because I'm poor, I can't have videotapes to watch movies that I enjoy. I can't have books to read and to educate the few friends I have. Well, I don't have any friends because everyone involved is somehow or another is getting an advantage off of being my friend. They're stealing from me. They're all deciding I'm a hoarder and I'm crazy. And I'm not crazy and I'm not a hoarder. Or if I am a hoarder, the definition of hoarder is a good thing, not a bad thing in the dictionary. But they imply it's a bad thing. And I'm not a fire hazard. But the way the landlord runs this building and every building in Yonkers that is allowed to do this is a real fire hazard. It's going to cause a fire eventually because the people are ignorant and they don't understand what they're doing, and it makes a lot of electricity be spent. It makes everyone pay twice. They pay for their heat in the lease, in the rent, but then that money doesn't go into the heat, and then they have to pay for it again. So then the people who are low middle class working here, they don't care. I don't know what they do. They do whatever they do to get by, and they stay here. They like the spot because it's close to the buses going into the city. And other people don't come here. They go elsewhere. But this is a very desirable location because of Caryl Avenue, because 100 years ago, this was a railroad station on Caryl Avenue from the New York Putnam Railroad that came up from New York, went up from Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. It went to Putnam. And the branch line came across. It came through Van Cortlandt Park. There was a station there. Then there was a station maybe before Van Cortlandt Park. There was a couple of stations down 231st Street somewhere. I mean, this is before the subways, or they were like subways. And they came up through here. It came to Caryl Avenue. Then it went to Carroll Street or to another street, and then went to McLean, and then it went to the funicular railroad that was on South Broadway, back from it. If you go down South Broadway, you go behind some of those stores, there's a whole lot of extra space because there was a railroad track there. An abutment where the train went, and it went to the funicular railroad where it went up the hill to Park Hill, and then it continued down, it went over New Main Street, and it went down to where now there's a garage there that the city has that was all 3 or 5 tracks where trains could stop. It was the end of the train, and it was called Getty Square because of Mr. Robert Parkhill Getty, who was a politician and a landowner and a schemer or whatever he was, and that's why they call it Getty Square. And that Parkhill is called Parkhill because that was his middle name, and he did the construction up there, these fancy houses to look over the Hudson River. And the only way to get there was to use the funicular railroad. It's a railroad that's flat, and it goes up and down, one car, it goes up and down the mountain side. And that was ended around 1939 or 40, they stopped operating it here. In 1959, I hear, is when the railroad stopped that goes at Caryl Avenue, that goes to Getty Square. And I know this. I know because I worked for Mr. Leroy France, who owned the Yonkers Railroad, which was the trolley cars. I worked for him when I was 20. I know this stuff. He was a multi-millionaire. His family invented teeth. His great-grandfather and grandfather, his family owned American Dental Supply Company. He owned a bank in New Rochelle, and they had a branch in Yonkers. Now it's on Getty Square, where the Chase is. That was one of their branches for his bank that he owned. And he owned the Yonkers Railroad, and he operated that, made a profit. They operated it so poor people could get to work. He was a good Christian, honest man. He wasn't a crook, but he did good things. And I worked for him when he was 90 years old. His son, who had $600 million in today's money, counting from them, he hired me because I was an Eagle Scout and a Christian, and he had confidence that I would be a good person to stay with his father, who was 97 or 90 something. And his wife had just died, and I had been helping him. I didn't know he was rich. I thought he was a poor homeless or a man living in the nursing homes. But Jesus did that. I don't have anything to do with that, except for the fact that I was allowed to have the honor of learning a lot of things and knowing the histories of New Rochelle. And when I was 5 years old, and until I was 8 years old, there were police officers in New Rochelle and Yonkers and White Plains who were working with organized crime. They were taking numbers. There wasn't a lottery yet. The world was a little different, and they were committing crimes, prostitution, and I tell you, they were eating children. There's a whole bunch of people who, I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't seen it, but Son of Sam ended up in Yonkers. And in that Ottermeyer Park, they were sacrificing children, which they ate after they sacrificed them. And in Van Cortlandt Park. And is it not true? I don't know. I didn't see it. But you can go on the internet and look up Jimmy Boots, and he's telling it. Now, if he's lying, then I don't know he's lying. He has an awful lot of facts. But he was the one that connected the Son of Sam. He was the police officer. He was from Minnesota, and he worked in this police office, and they assigned him to deal with prostitution, and he investigated all this stuff, and he was a New York City cop who had a free hand to go in and really investigate the whole thing. And it's not good. It's really not good if you know the truth, and you can't say it because it sounds absurd. But if it's true, it's way past not being absurd. It's really bad. But here I am saying all this, and now, so then they're going to not let this be used. They're not going to let this be said because of legal issues or whatever, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a poor slob. That's what I am. And I'm being abused. And if the landlady wanted to rent, all she had to do in April or May was fix the apartment. And if someone would explain to me the law, and because I use the dictionary and I don't make any sense. I didn't have any fire hazard here. I didn't have clutter. I didn't have any of those things, because I know what the definition of those words are. If I did have clutter, it was a messy table or a messy floor. And then they said, oh, well, he needs an aide. Get him an aide. We'll get you an aide. They did that for 4, 5, 6 years. They never got me an aide, and I wasn't able to do the work. I was busy going out to find a place to take a shower every day because I couldn't take a shower here. We were paying the rent. We should have been able to take a shower, but I had to stand in sewage to take a shower. Now, how in the world am I supposed to do what I need to do? I'm handicapped. Even then, I was using 2 canes half the time because there was no heat at night and I couldn't get my feet healed. And then I ended up in a hospital where they wanted to cut my legs off because of the lack of heat. And these things are connected. They're directly connected, but then the court will say, oh, well, they're not directly connected. So what am I supposed to do? Your Honor, or your jury, or whoever's listening to this, the landlady, the landlord, the Emma's Properties Incorporated, they're at fault. It's their fault. If they want to get paid rent, they should obey the law and honor the leases and the rents and provide what's needed. And if they don't know how to do it, then they should sell the building to someone or who does. And that's not what can I do? I can move, and then some poor slob moves in here and has the same trouble I have. Or we can be in court, which we are. And we're in the federal court, and we're here, and we're going to try to push this issue until either the courts and the government say, well, it's all right. We don't want them to have heat at night. We're happy for it to be the way it is, and say it publicly, and say it plainly, or they let the buildings in Yonkers be managed by professionals and not people who might be extorting money and stealing from the government. And the end result of it is that the taxpayers, the working people, pay and pay and pay and pay. They pay for the people, the 2, 3 a month welfare, poor people like me who get evicted so the landlady can get the extra money. They pay for the legal aid, or the lawyers that represent the poor, but don't solve the issue. They pay for the hospital bill for me to go in the hospital for almost 2 years and have to fight the doctors not to let them cut my foot off, because I know that the doctors are having another scam that's bigger than this one. And it's wrong. You people, you poor people who work and get paid not too much money, you pay taxes. You pay half your money in taxes. You don't have any money left over at the end of the year because you're working for free. So now they got all the poor people, black and white, but especially black, working, and you're still slaves. You have no money left at the end of the year. So you work for free because all the money goes into taxes or it goes into rent, and the taxes on 1 Caryl Avenue are probably kind of high. I don't know. And they're not supposed to get a FOIL request. The firemen, when they came back the last time, which was around the time when Lasco inspected, that's on record, and when they were here the first time, God was kind. They went upstairs and they found this lady. She was home instead of working. And they saw her apartment, and they saw that the ceiling had caved in on her daughter. Because of this very reasons I'm saying, because of the hot and cold, the freezing and the unfreezing of the walls, the water coming down from the roof, it created a mismanagement situation that was dangerous enough to hurt someone. Oh, but it's okay, it's not okay, I don't know. And the firemen saw 2 apartments, and they saw that I was not lying, that there wasn't heat here. And then when they came down, they said to me, well, if she's going to make an issue over you that you have too much stuff in your apartment, they didn't say that, but they implied it, then every apartment in this building needs to be inspected because there's gross problems here. That's the gist of what they meant by what they said. I'm intelligent enough to understand it. And then when they came back in November, I don't know the exact date, it's on the record, they said to me, and that was it was after the inspector had said to me, there's no complaints on this apartment. No, none. I went down, I can't get the information because the city has the FOIL things figured out that a handicapped person can't get it in. I'm not a poor handicapped person like me. By the time I get the FOIL request in, it's going to be too late for the trial because I'm overwhelmed with things to do and I have no help. And here I am having to defend myself. I don't have an office. I don't have all you people have offices and secretaries and all these things. You don't do your jobs right. They don't do their jobs right. I have evidence to show that. They don't even get my zip code right. And it's unreasonable what's going on, and it's not my fault. The firemen said, there's hundreds of complaints of no heat in that building. So to do a FOIL request, which I've been trying to do, I can't get my case manager or my lawyer or anyone to get me the FOIL requests in. I'll try to get them in, but there's a scheme going on here that everybody isn't doing their job right. And nobody knows what's really going on. And they all are happy because they're getting paid and they live, and nobody will help anyone really resolve these issues. I hope to God that I get to do that. Not that I want to do it to be important or big, but because that's what's needed. So now I made this almost an hour. The heat's still not on. I can touch the radiator without any problem. It's 7:34 in the morning. According to this, it's 37 degrees Fahrenheit out. I'm sure the court will find a way not to accept this, or I'm confident that they might not. But it's on YouTube. I can't make a physical picture because I can't afford to make one. I don't have the means. I'm going to stop this at an hour, and when the heat comes on, I'll make a little video which will be separate. Thank you. Dear Jesus, please save me. Please rescue us. Please let what's right happen instead of what's wrong. And please save all these people. Help them. Don't punish them. Help them and get things right so everyone can be happy in you. Goodbye. Amen.